Coach, I was stunned by what our guest today had to say. 38% of Gen Z team members have had to take a mental health day after receiving feedback.
And she also gave great advice for a leader working with Gen Z. Instead of doing an annual review, do a 12-week review.
Let's get into the episode.
This is the Limitless Leadership Lounge, where Coach and John learn along with you from some of the world's most decorated leaders. Recently promoted, let's sharpen the saw together.
We're really excited to have another great guest today, Dr. Andrea Mata. But to make it easier on me, and she likes this, she is going to be referred by me today as Dr. Dre. So Dr. Dre is a seasoned speaker and clinical psychologist, has had the privilege of educating over 25,000 people across the globe on the importance of creating high expectations, high support environments for the next generations. Many Gen Z employees are entering the workforce without the adaptability or accountability needed to succeed, not because of the lack of potential, but because popular parenting trends like gentle parenting failed to prepare them. On stage and online, she brings a wealth of industry expertise and insight, delivering a message with direct approach and a signature side of snark. Whether sharing her personal experience or teaching practical insights, her audience is guaranteed to leave inspired, fortified, and ready to ignite real change. She also has a book that we'll dive into about parenting. And when she's not speaking or supporting clients, she spends time with her husband of 14 years, twin 8-year-olds, God bless you, and a 6-year-old. And when she's not chasing them around, she does try to sneak time for reading, biking, running, or swimming. Without further ado, Dr. Dre, welcome to the Limitless Leadership Lounge.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for it.
Excellent. In doing my research, you have so many things we can talk about, but I know this is something that I value, so I'm curious to share with our audience what you would help with leaders with setting up non-negotiables in their life.
I think the one non-negotiable is the phrase that I always use when I'm talking with companies and leaders and managers is set high expectations with high support. A lot of the time what I'm seeing now in the industry is that the managers are lowering their expectations. And that's not where we want to be, because it's just going to lead to like manager burnout and leader burnout and just overall employee burnout. And so you want to set those expectations high and then maintain that high support as well.
Yeah. And Dr. Dre, how about from the parenting side of things? I know you're passionate about that with 3 of your own. So tell us how those high expectations are transferable over there too in leadership.
Yeah, so one thing that I always talk about is that parenting and leadership are the same skills. Like you want to lead your teams just like you want to parent. So in the business sense, I say high expectations, high support. But when I'm talking to parents, I always talk about high expectations within the context of the warm and fuzzies. That's authoritative parenting at its best, and that's what leads to the best developmental outcomes.
Well said. I know you spend a lot of time helping Gen Z, which I know older leaders like myself sometimes I struggle a little bit Gen Z. So when I did some research, it said you shared Gen Z isn't broken; they're under-equipped. Delve into that for us.
Yeah, so for the last 20 years, there's been this movement of more gentle parenting, helicopter parenting. So we're going to focus in on their feelings. We're going to get rid of rewards and punishments, and we're going to treat them as if they're our partner or on the same level as us. And so then they went into the schools, and then schools are promoting trauma-informed practices, which again is like more feelings, and we're gonna get rid of rewards and like letting the kids have their say and their own opinions on how they're being educated. And then when they get to the workplace, they're like, what do you mean you don't care about my feelings? Like, I need a mental health day. Like, you just gave me feedback. I now need to take the next day off because, like, my feelings are hurt. And what do you mean I can't be promoted? And what do you mean you're not going to praise me even though I made $1 million mistake? Like, what is this? Like, I don't want any of this. Like, I want to go back to school where they told me I was great for doing the bare minimum amount of stuff.
But what about parenting has changed? Because this, you mentioned, starts with the parents, and it wasn't this way 50 years ago, and now it is. So, what's happened to maybe the generation before Gen Z that has caused them to change their parenting style?
Yeah, so that's a great question, John. So what I always talk about is so Gen X and millennials, they were raised mostly with what I call a militant parenting style. So like my way or the highway, it's the whole mentality of, oh, you're crying? I'm going to give you something to cry about. And so it's like that
I heard
militant
that before.
parenting. Exactly. Like any Gen Xer, any millennial has probably heard that phrase before. I know I have. And so they were much more militant parents and then or parent they experienced militant parenting, and then so they did the whole thing of I'm never going to parent that way, that was awful. And so what happened was they swung completely to the opposite end, and then you had social media introducing like parenting influencers, and so that's where like the gentle parenting, conscious parenting started to come out, where we're going to focus on feelings and we're going to get rid of rewards, and we want to be their friends. But then this is now Gen Z is in a mental health crisis and they're being fired from work. Like 60% of businesses have fired a Gen Z employee within months of hiring them, all because they're having these issues because they're under equipped. They don't have the skills. They don't know how to adapt.
Well, let's delve in a little deeper. Me being a veteran leader for a long time, if we could zero down, because you could probably have a laundry list, but let's talk zero down into three keys you would advise a leader in helping work with Gen Z to help them be successful in the workforce.
The first thing is I always tell leaders, because recently one of my friends reached out and she works for a major media company. I won't say what the major media company is, but she's a director in it. And she reached out right around Christmas time and I have this employee who I want to hire because she was an intern for the company, and supposedly she's a rock star. And I'm like, okay, awesome. That sounds like a win. Go hire her. And she's, but I asked her internship like supervisor whether or not they would hire her, and the supervisor said no. So then it gave me pause, and I was like, okay, so what did he say that caused you to pause? And she like took a mental health day like the afternoon after getting disappointing news, and then she talked about, what was the other thing that she did? Oh, some of her coworkers like went out to lunch and didn't invite her for some reason. I don't know what the reason was, but then she like when they came back, she was like relationally aggressive towards them and was like, oh, you guys abandoned me, and made it a big stink. And so my friend was like, the director was like, I can't have this. And so we met for about an hour. I did some coaching with her. And I was like, okay, the first thing you want to do is you want to move away from 1 year evaluations and you want to do 12-week evaluations. So them coming, Gen Z coming out of college, they're used to like 15, 16-week semesters. And so if you create what's called like the 12-week, I read there's a great book, it's called the 12-week year. And so you do evaluations every 12 weeks. And you do the evaluations where you're focusing on behavior, actions, and not just regular like ambiguous things that mean absolutely nothing. Like you will improve. It's what does it mean you will improve? So 12-week years probably, or the 12-week, yes, evaluations is the first tip I have. Then I would say figuring out, so that's a high expectation piece with like behavioral expectations in that 12-week evaluation. The next piece is like figuring out what kind of support do they need. So where are they struggling? Where are they underdeveloped? Where are they under equipped? And then going and getting them coaching or professional development that's going to help them build up those skills. And then I think so that's the second one, is like coming in with that support piece, figuring out where do they need help, where do they need development so they can reach those expectations that you're putting in that 12-week evaluation. Then the last tip is, I think, if you think they should know something, they may not know what to do. Like you have to consider, like, these are individuals who were never raised with a landline. So like they don't know how to make phone calls. They don't know how to call the pizza and order a pizza. And so like finances and all of these things and like emails and how to dress and how they're supposed to act. So you have to do a lot of teaching on skills that you think are just basic common sense skills, they don't have them.
Expectations, support, communication is what I hear
Mm-hmm.
from you,
Yep.
Dr. Dre. And those are three really key pieces for a leader. And then how about that Gen Z student or former student who's now entering the workforce, either as an intern or entry level employee? What are some tips that you would have for them to stand out? Because I know, it's not right now, it's not that hard to stand out. And it's not always the things that we think of that allow us to stand out.
Yeah, so I always tell the story. So back during COVID, my husband was a superintendent. He's a mechanical engineer. So he was a superintendent at a plant. And so he had 90 employees underneath him during COVID. And it got to the point where he looked at me and he was like, I like the bar is really low right now to hire people to come and make 70, $80,000 for me a year. I'm like, what's the bottom rung? And they have to show up and they need to not be high or drunk. If you could just simply show up, not be high, not be drunk, like you are already like a few like steps above other Gen Z employees. Then we get into what I call adaptability skills. So if you are willing to be an agent in your own life and be like, okay, I can control my own behaviors, I can control my own actions. And so that's what I'm going to take control over. I'm going to take control over my reactions. I always say, give a shit. If you are like showing people that you care and you're taking pride in your work, you're going to stand out. If you are looking and doing teamwork, so if you are really focusing in on the betterment of the team compared to just individual goals, you're going to stand out that way. And so I think an accountability. And so showing up, giving a shit, being a team player, being an agent in your own life. I think though, and being dependable, knowing that your bosses know that they can trust you, I think you're going to stand out in those ways.
I got to dig a little deeper because you brought up being a team player. Do you have a story where maybe you've worked with a client with helping them with the big word you hear a lot is the culture? Okay. How do I in fact, I do a presentation on how to build championship team culture. But do you have a story when you worked with a client on how you help them build better culture?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. I'm a high school football coach. And so they're Gen Zs. And so I usually work with a small group of the football, like our leaders. And I remember we were talking about very much like cultivating what we wanted our team culture to be that season. And in this I think we had 8 guys at that time, 8 guys at that time. And of those 8, 50% of them are playing D1 football,
Oh,
like
wow.
now in college. So like they were pretty impressive kind of guys. And so when 50% of our top 8 players are going D1, that's pretty amazing. And
Yeah.
so I remember like having conversations with them and they decided to come up with this term. They're like, we want football dogs. Like we want other players to be dogs. And I was like, okay, what does that look like? Let's get really specific and solid and build that out so that other people know exactly what it means to be like a dog. And so then we came up with, okay, the D stands for this, the A stands for this, the W stands for this, the G stands for this, and the S stands for this. And it was funny because during that time we got the W stood for we over me. And so imagine this, I'm in a room with 8 high school football players and it's just me and our head coach is like sitting in the back, but he just sits in the back and observes like the 9 of us just going back and forth. And so then it was like, how are we going to communicate visually we over me? Are we going to put we and then a line and then me? Are we going to put like we and then greater than like me? Are we going to put the words? And it's just funny to have high school football players like debating over visually what is this going to look like. And so I think having those kind of conversations, inviting people in, like the big leaders, the ones that have influence over your team, into the room to have these kind of conversations conversations and really flesh out what does it look like so that we can easily say, yes, this person's doing it. No, that person is not doing it.
And you're also giving them ownership too. That's a key aspect of leadership.
Yeah.
So do you feel like how important do you feel that is for Gen Z especially, who was often as a professor, as an adjunct professor, one thing that I notice is a lot of students have a really hard time taking any ownership. So it's what exactly do I need to be writing about? What's the font? What's the word count, the page count? Do you have any text prompts for me to use? No, do your research and put it together yourself. So how important is that too for Gen Z to learn how to take that ownership?
I think one of the this is something that they struggle with, and I think other people struggle with as well, is like you have to set a kind of that expectations first. So like when I was a college professor for 9 years, I would just tell them ahead of time, this is the font you are using, this is the size, you're double spacing it, this is the page. Like I gave them all out so they knew exactly what the community, like what the expectations were. And then they have to spend all of their energy and their anxieties like figuring out all of those basic kind of things. And so I think you have to get compliance with that. It's the same thing with parenting. You have to have this basic level of expectations and you need them to respect you and you need them to do what you need them to do. And then once they're on board and once they have proved that they can follow these basic levels of expectations and meet these basic standards, then that's when they start to get invited into more of their individuality and more of their creativity. Because I think that's something where Gen Z strives in. They are disruptors. They don't care. They are like, oh, this is how it's always been. I'm just going to punch it and I'm going to bust it open and this is why it's better. And so, but they have to realize first, they have to come in, they have to be obedient, they have to be compliant. And then when we build trust, then that's when they can come in and start disrupting things. You need to know the rules before can figure out how to break them.
Good point. One of my keys when I do leadership presentations is effective communication, which I know you have expertise. So if you were working with a young leader and helping him or her become a better communicator, if you were to zero in on, let's just say two things, what would you advise that person to be a more effective communicator?
The first thing, I used to do this activity when I was a college professor, and we did communication, and we did it, I think, in our sports like class and like some other classes as well. And so I would pair up the students, and they would be like facing back to back, and I would give one just a basic drawing, like squares, rectangles, triangles, those kind of things. And I would give it to one leader or one of the students in their pairs, and then they had to communicate and they had to tell their partner what to draw, how to draw it. And then and then we would switch it up. So then the other person would have to draw whatever it is that the person was describing without seeing it, and they had to communicate it. And so I think that teaches them, that makes them problem aware, that all of us think that we are great communicators, and chances are we're not as good as we think we are communicating, especially like the details and the specifics of it. And so I think we have to first make them problem aware, and then we need to give them very specific development workshops, those kind of things, in order to be better leaders. So I think that and then the ability to accept feedback is the other thing. So like making them problem aware, teaching them basic communication stuff, and then also accepting feedback. I cannot tell you the number of times where I've looked at one of my high school football players and they just the coach is giving them feedback as they come off the field. Coach is giving them feedback and they just want to jaw with the coach and tell the coach, explain what they did. And there's so many times where I'll pull the player away and I'll just be like, hey, when coach is giving you feedback, you simply make eye contact, you say okay, and you listen to what they're saying and you say okay. That's all we need you to do. We don't need you to explain why you were you weren't doing it correctly, or else coach wouldn't be giving you feedback.
I got to delve into one thing deeper because you brought up something, and it's very unique in the fact that you work with a high school football team as a female, because there's not a lot of female coaches per se. So tell us about how you broke that barrier, because we always talk about as a leader or someone is you have to build trust with them. Okay, so you're coming from a different situation because you're a female working in really a male-dominated sport
Oh, yeah.
that's very physical as well. So tell us how you broke those barriers down.
Yeah, so how I originally got it was I was a college professor, and during that time, so I think it was actually starting in like 2014, every fall semester, the college football team, it was a D2 program. The college football team would started like the right kind of tough. And so the players would report on a Friday, and then Saturday morning, before they even stepped on the field, they spent 4 hours in the classroom. This is not
Uh-huh.
even college courses. This is like literally preseason. Before they stepped on the field, they did 4 hours in the classroom where they did classroom etiquette, social media training, sexual assault training, and then I would go in with substance use training and talk to them like, how do we use I know you guys are to use substances. How do we use substances smartly, responsibly? That's the word I'm looking for. And during that time, there was one of the assistant coaches. His name's Stephen Adams, and he was there, and we formed a friendship, a relationship, those kind of things. And then in 2021 he reached out to me. He's, hey, I need to meet with you. And he had since left the university, and I was like, okay. And so him and I met, and he was like, hey, I'm now the head coach of Findlay High School, and I want you to come on staff. And I was like, okay, what do you need me to do? And I need you to do leadership stuff with the guys. And I was like, okay. Starts telling me about his players. He starts telling me about his quarterback. And I look at him, I'm like, your quarterback needs composure training. And he needs what? And I was like, composure training. And he was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So this is what we're going to do. You're going to come on staff. You're going to do what you do. And I'm just going to let you do whatever it is that you do, because you know what you're talking about and I don't. So that was back in 2021. I've been with him ever since. I've been with our players ever since. We currently have 3 of our previous alumni are now national champions over the last 2 years. So that's been pretty awesome. Like we've been grateful to have these. But I think it's definitely been unique because I'm the only female other than the water girls on the sidelines. And so there's been some growing pains because the parents are like, who is this woman on the sidelines, like talking with our young men? And so it took a lot of educating the parents, letting them know who I am, rolling with the punches. Like without a doubt, every year someone thinks I'm someone's mom or someone's like wife. And so then we have to educate even our players that like, no, I'm not like our strength and conditioning coach's wife. Like I'm on the sidelines, like I'm talking to the players, I'm developing you all, those kind of things. And it's also been what I have to do, like and I think the reason why I can do it, I was raised with 3 older brothers, and because I am super sarcastic, and I've worked predominantly with teenage boys my whole career. And so I remember there was this one time we were in a group chat, and one of the players was like, why should you be and he was just jostling with me. He was like, why should you be our sports performance coach, Dr. Mata? And I was like, I don't know, like maybe because I taught it at the college level for 7 years. I've worked with NFL players, I've worked with world champions, I've been asked to write a book on it. Like, I don't know, I do workshops with like clubs and all of the things. And they're like, okay, I guess you can be our social media. And I just can't get like my feelings are not hurt. Like I just throw it right back at them.
Yeah, that's important with Gen Z. And sometimes parents, we don't quite understand how to talk their language.
Yep.
And when it comes to parenting in Gen Z, or now I think it's even Gen Alpha, right? So it's getting even into a new generation. My wife and I have agreed, okay, we're not going to hit. We're not going to hit children. We don't feel like that's an appropriate punishment, but we do know that punishments and clear expectations are very important. So do you have some suggestions for parents, especially newer parents, some of the disciplinary actions that you can take that don't cross the line, but are still firm enough to help raise really effective non-Gen Z like children?
My first tip is always natural consequences. So letting, and I know there's the FAFO parenting or FAFO parenting has gotten a lot of press over the last 9 months, like F around and find out parenting. And it's just essentially natural consequences. And so what a natural consequence is, instead of nagging your child and being like, don't do that, don't do that. It's always the common one is like a coat outside when it's cold outside and them refusing to put a coat on, or them like getting their fingers stuck in drawers. Instead of like constantly being like, put a coat on, put a coat on, put a coat on, don't do that, don't do that, leave your feet, leave the drawers alone, you're going to snap your fingers. Just letting them experience what happens, letting them pinch their fingers, let them be cold outside, because then they will learn. And then just sit back and giggle to yourself when they're like, I'm cold, and it's yeah, because I told you to put a coat on. And so letting them find out that and figure it out that, oh, I should not do that. And like the limit is always, and parents are different in regards to risk averseness, right? And so like some parents, like I remember I let my youngest, we were at an ice cream place and all three kids along with other kids were like climbing trees, and I was like, okay, whatever. And then it's funny because earlier in the day I was having a conversation with a mom, like a client, and she was like, he like wants to climb 40 feet in the air. And I'm like, is he really climbing like 40 feet in the air, or is he climbing like 10 feet? And you're like freaking out. And then that night my kids are like climbing a tree. And then all of a sudden my youngest, I like all of a sudden hear bam. And I turn and I look, and she was getting out of the tree, and it was probably, I don't know, less than 5 feet. And so she fell from 5 feet onto her butt, and she was fine. Her pants weren't fine, like it slit up the back, and so her little tushy's hanging out. And so then we're like, okay, you're gonna walk right in front of me so I can cover up your tushy. But it wasn't like, oh my God, I told you not to climb trees. It was like she learned, hey, maybe we shouldn't climb trees in Crocs. Okay. And I'll have that conversation like, okay, what did you learn? And they'll be like, I shouldn't have climbed trees in Crocs. And I'm like, yeah, Crocs aren't really good tree climbing attire.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I gotta say, so you're giving them, you're sometimes less is more, is what you're
Yeah.
saying too, is like, just get out of the way. I do see this all the time. The parents who are just, what do they call them, helicopter parents, where they're just always hovering, like, oh no, don't do that, don't do that. What about leaders in businesses and corporations when you have Gen Z employees? Do you see that same problem?
Yes, because they've been raised in all of these things. And so the Gen Z employees are used to being protected and not learning these natural consequences. And then they do. And then the manager or leader gives them feedback, and they're like, I need a mental health day. Because 38% of Gen Zs have taken a mental health day after getting feedback. And so I think one thing for leaders to do is use, and I talk about it in parenting, is logical consequences. So when they do something that they're not supposed to do, you want to follow the 4 R's of logical consequences. So you want whatever the consequence you're going to put in, you want it ideally to be revealed in advance. So, hey, if you do, this is what your consequence is going to be. You want it to be related to the actual behavior that they are doing. You want it to be respectful, and you want it to be reasonable. So, Coach Johnson, I know you can relate to this. Tons of coaches always cringe because when they're like, my athletes are not putting in all the effort, I'm going to make them run. And I'm like, no. Or I remember when I was a high school basketball player, and for every free throw we missed in a game, we had to run a 9. And it was like, what is this teaching? It's not teaching us to make free throws at the end of the game. It's not, or like running. I'm like, do this. And I remember I was working with a women's soccer coach for college at the Power 4 school. And I was like, don't do this. And he's, why not? And I was like, what do you actually want from them? And I want them to put in 100% effort the whole entire practice. And I was like, okay, this is what I want you to do. If they're putting in 100% effort, you're going to say, hey, you guys were supposed to do 7 sprints, but because you guys have done so well with effort and you guys have been like in it and on it all practice long, we're only doing 6 sprints today. And he's, oh. And I'm like, yes, that's called negative reinforcement. It's amazing. You should do that more than punishing them for not putting in effort. Like, we want the consequence to be related. We want them to learn something from the consequence that's going to help them not do the behavior in the future.
Well said, Dr. Dre. Speaking, because we've talked a lot about parenting, you have the book, the #2 parenting book. Tell us one or two things you'd like the reader to learn from the book.
So the whole premise of the book is practical parenting tips in the time it takes you to poop. A mom poop, not a dad poop, because I don't know what men are doing in the bathroom for 45 minutes, but it's a real thing.
Emails, social media, text messages, a lot to do.
Reading, pondering life,
Yes.
whatever it is, avoiding taking care of kids. But so I think the biggest thing is other than the intro. So it does an intro, and then it has the very first chapter, and the first chapter is all is not lost. And so it talks about how us as parents can always recover. It doesn't matter what you did 5 seconds ago, 5 minutes ago, 5 months ago. You as a parent can always learn skills to make your parenting better, that is then going to have a ripple effect on your children. And I think it's the same thing for leaders. It doesn't matter what you have done, you can always recover, you can always get better. You just need to adopt more of a growth mindset so that you're willing to learn.
Well said. And I got to ask one more question regarding parenting and actually young people in the workforce, because you mentioned mental health days, and that's a very trendy topic. And I would agree that 38% statistic is alarming, especially after feedback. That's something that Gen Z we need to figure out whether or not it's actually the right thing to take a mental health day. However, my only question for you is that mental health is certainly an important topic for all of us, not just Gen Z, but a lot of people struggle with it. I think Gen Z is maybe just able to be a little bit more open with it. How do we balance having an organization and a family that is cognizant of the realities of mental health challenges without allowing that to impact our performance so much?
I think so. I was on a podcast with a friend, and I said this, and it resonated with him. It was, we're talking more about mental health, but it doesn't mean we understand it any better. And so I think there's a lot of jibber jabber about mental health and, oh, my mental health, I need to take a mental health day. But people aren't necessarily understanding what it means to be mentally well. And so it's one thing to say, oh, I'm going to take a mental health, like, I got feedback, I'm going to take a mental health day. That's fine. You just don't need to broadcast it all over social media. Just take the day off. And then instead of scrolling through social media or like binge watching TV that's not actually helping your mental health, go and do things that's actually going to help your mental health. Be with family, go for a walk out in nature, work out, journal. There's lots of things that you can be doing to improve your mental health. And it doesn't need to be broadcasted that you're taking a mental health day. And I think we all could be doing better with our mental health, myself included, where I always talk about the 5 fundamentals of mental health. And so it's like, how are you eating? Are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough water? Are you getting enough fruits and vegetables? I'm not a nutritionist, but like those are the basic things that are associated with depression and anxiety. Not having enough protein, not drinking enough water, eating enough fruits and vegetables. The second one is sleep. Are you getting at least 7 hours of sleep a night? That's especially for Gen Z. They're like, oh, I'm averaging 4 to 5. And I'm like, you cannot sustain on 4 or 5 hours of sleep at night. Like, it does not work. The third one is connection. So are you feeling connected with individuals? Rejuvenation. So spending 30 minutes a day doing something that you enjoy, that brings you joy, that rejuvenates you. And then the last one is movement. Go ahead.
That rejuvenation one is not sitting around scrolling social media, watching Netflix, correct?
Correct. Because I always have this conversation with my clients, and they're like, oh, I like scrolled, and that's like my rejuvenation. I was like, okay, this is what I want you to do. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being like you're depressed or sad, and 5 being like you're happy. Like, where's your mood at right now? And then go ahead and scroll on social media for 30 minutes. And then at the end of it, reevaluate what your mood is again on a scale of 1 to 5. If it stayed the same, okay, so it's a net neutral activity. You can continue to do it. If it's gone down, well, then it's net negative, and so it's making your mood worse. And so you should probably stop doing that or reconfigure your algorithm. And maybe by the rare chance is actually making your mood better, which I doubt. Go ahead and continue doing that. But chances are it's going to be the other one where it's bringing your mood down, and you should not do that.
We talked about from the leader standpoint of communication, but I'd like to delve a little bit deeply. What advice would you give? Because you're saying Gen Z tends to struggle with feedback, but what would advice you'd give both a leader and the team member on how they can become a better listener?
So active listening is basic. So making eye contact, putting all distractions away, because this is not someone having their phone out does not feel, no one's going to feel warm and fuzzies next to you or feel connected or feel heard. And so I think putting your phone away, putting distractions away, sitting next to the person, making eye contact. You can even sometimes I'll suggest like going for a walk together, and sometimes just like the fact of going shoulder to shoulder and walking and not having to make eye contact, you can actually listen better. And then asking reflective questions. So, oh, tell me more about that. Oh, okay. Really trying to understand where this person is coming from. Because I think another big thing with Gen Z is that they're easily offended and they're sensitive. So for instance, I know someone who came to me and they're like, hey, my number one designer got fired because the 2 Gen Z employees were like hurt and offended by what this person said. And I was like, and when I used to teach a class called Dating in the 21st Century, on the very first day, I would tell the students, I'm like, look, you can say whatever you want in here, and no one can turn around and be like, I'm offended, and shut you down because like their feelings are hurt. Like, we're not doing that in this class. We're going to have real conversations about dating in the 21st century and our beliefs and those kind of things. And so if you are offended, the onus is on you to ask the person who said the thing that made you feel offended why they believe what they believe, and like trying to understand what is going on, what our differences are, instead of just shutting people down and saying that they're offended.
Where do you think that easily offended nature comes from?
I think it comes from the focusing on the feelings. So like for so many years, we have been we're not trying to do anything that's going to make our children feel uncomfortable, and we are going to focus in on their feelings. And so like now we've become very much aware of our feelings and our emotions, and no one should be able to do or say anything that's going to hurt our feelings. And we should only be able to do things that we want to do. I cannot tell you the number of times clients are like, I didn't turn in that paper. And I was like, why didn't you turn in the paper? And they're like, because I didn't feel like writing it. And I was like, but you have to write the paper even when you don't feel like writing the paper. And they're like, no, that's just not me. How is that working out for you? And they're like, oh, I dropped out of college, so I got that going for me.
Yikes. It's a pretty grim outlook. I don't know. I know what you're saying is totally honest and is from your experience.
Yep.
Is there, just out of curiosity, some of those positives too about Gen Z is there reason to feel optimism about this generation coming up?
Don't get me wrong. There are Gen Z rock stars. There are ones that are like, I'm on it. I'm going to show up. I'm not going to be drunk. I'm not going to be high. Like, I'm going to learn everything that I possibly can. And they are going to just climb through the ranks super quickly. So I'm not to say that like all of them are this stereotypical Gen Z, but there's a lot more than there has been previously. And I just think for right now, managers and leaders aren't talking about it. Like, I was on a different podcast, and Betsy Ham, she was the host, and the reason why she brought me on was because she went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and after she spoke, like 2 women came up to her and was like, and literally whispered, and they're like, what do we do about Gen Z? And she's like, why are we whispering? But I don't think enough people are having conversations about how under-equipped Gen Z is and what we can realistically be doing to help them.
Dr. Dre, I have one final question, but first of all, I just want to share my gratitude for all your wonderful insights. We've really enjoyed this conversation. And then, John, I'm sure we'll have another question and want to find out how people can reach out to you. But Dr. Dre, my final question, we're going back to leadership. You had one of the things I researched, it said that why traditional leadership isn't landing. Can you delve into that more deeply for us?
Because I think traditional leadership it has the high expectations, but it doesn't have the high support. And one of the things with different generations, different generations have different beliefs on boundaries and how much they're willing to share about their own personal life. So I remember meeting with a manager. Is she a millennial? She's either a Gen X or a millennial. And she was struggling with a Gen Z employee because the Gen Z employee just wanted to talk about like her day and her weekend and talk all about her personal life. And the manager was like, whoa, I don't even want you to know what my husband's name is. And then the Gen Z was like, but other things, it is all that. And so I think traditional leadership doesn't work because it doesn't bring in that high support piece. So it's more of that militant leadership style where we really do need to bring in that high support piece, because I think everyone is going to do better with high expectations, high support, not just the Gen Z. It's going to be the millennials. It's going to be the Gen Xers. Like, everyone wants to be validated. Everyone wants to be supported. Everyone wants to feel like they belong in their workplace. And that's what traditional leadership is missing.
I did a presentation last year at an educational leadership conference. Kidded them that the 3 R's in education are not reading, arithmetic, and writing. It's relationships. And that's something that I totally agree with you. It's something that I thought I improved as I became a better leader, is focus on building better relationships.
Final question from me, Dr. Dre. So you're a leader, say you're a leader who is Gen Z. I'm part of Gen Z, but people that I'm leading are actually millennials, Gen X. It's the opposite of the traditional framework. We think the leaders are the older people and the team members are the younger people. What about when that's flipped? Would you have a tip or two for Gen Z when they're in a position of leadership, and especially when it's in relation to those that are older than them? How do you build trust with people who might look down as you as just one of those Gen Zers?
Yeah, so I think it's still maintaining that high expectations, high support, and then going back to what Coach Johnson said, which is relationships. And I have a whole talk on it, like how to build relationships in an AI-driven world. And so it's all about relationships and getting people to buy into you as a leader. And then if you can get them to buy in, like, that's great. I remember there was a year that we were coaching, and we always ask the guys, we poll the guys, like, who should be our captains? Like, captains is a big thing, right? And it's like, who should be our captains? And there were times where that we were seeing like sophomores, and everyone always thinks like seniors, right? But there were times where we were seeing sophomores and juniors' names popping up as like they are the leaders. They are the ones that the guys are going to follow. Those are the ones that the guys want to be captains. And so I think you can be a younger leader, but you have to have something special about you, and you have to double down on relationships.
Double down on relationships. Always good advice, whether we're talking about parenting or in the organizations that we lead. Dr. Andrea Mata. Dr. Dre, we can't thank you enough for your time today and for all the insights you shared. If you want more of Dr. Dre, she's got a book out. So where can we find that book?
You can find it on Amazon. You can buy it. Or if you want an autographed copy and a Coop the Poop bookmark, you can go ahead and go to go to AndreaDMata.com, and you can message me there, and I will send you, or I can tell you how to buy a copy, and I will send you a Coop the Poop bookmark.
Links in the show notes, and then we can use it in the bathroom and continue avoiding the parenting responsibilities. And that's the dad strategy anyway. Dr. Mata, thank you again for your time today. We're excited to stay in touch and continue to follow your work.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.